My name is Jack, and I have been married to my wife Amy for 5 years. She has always had a soft spot for desserts and often goes to the dessert shop around the corner. Recently, she has been acting strangely, always going out mysteriously, and her attitude towards me has become increasingly cold. I was full of doubts, and it wasn't until I saw the ambiguous text messages on her phone that I realized she had cheated on me with the pastry chef at the dessert shop. She proposed divorce to me, which shocked and angered me. I kept seeing the happy memories of our relationship, and I would never give up this marriage easily. A battle to defend the marriage was about to begin. After learning the news that Amy had cheated, my life was instantly overshadowed by gloom, and every minute and every second became unbearable. Countless nights, I sat alone on the sofa in the living room, and the silence around me seemed to engulf me. My thoughts involuntarily drifted back to the past, to the sweet times we once had. I remember the first time I saw Amy. It was on a sunny afternoon. In a cafe in the city center, she was sitting by the window, and the sunlight streaming through the glass cast a golden glow on her. She was wearing a white dress, and the hem fluttered gently in the wind, like a blooming lily. I was captivated by her beauty, and for some reason I walked up to her and found the courage to say hello. She looked up, and at that moment I felt as if I were seeing the most beautiful scenery in the world. She had long, silky, golden hair that fell casually over her shoulders, the tips of which shimmered with an enchanting radiance in the sunlight. Her blue eyes were like deep pools of water, clear and mysterious, as if hiding countless stories. Her skin was as white as snow, and her delicate features were like works of art carefully sculpted by God. A high, straight nose, small lips. A single smile was enough to make me fall in love. From then on, we started to go out on dates frequently. We strolled together through the streets and alleys of the city, sharing each other's joys and sorrows. We watched the sun rise and set together, feeling the beauty of nature. We ran together on the beach, leaving behind a trail of happy footprints. Every time I saw her wearing a dress, walking gracefully by my side, I felt like the happiest man in the world. She was like a fairy who had come down to earth and lit up my life. Later, we naturally entered the hallowed halls of marriage. On our wedding day, she wore a white wedding dress and walked slowly towards the priest, holding my arm. Her face was filled with a happy smile, and her eyes were full of hope for the future. Amidst the blessings of our family and friends, we made a lifelong commitment. Life after marriage was incredibly sweet at first. Together, we decorated our home, and every piece of furniture and decoration was full of our love for each other. In the evenings, we would snuggle together and watch TV, sharing the funny stories of the day. On weekends, we would go to the supermarket together to buy ingredients, then go home and cook together. Although our cooking was not very good, the warmth of it made me feel very satisfied. However, as time passed, the trivialities of life gradually sapped the passion between us. I became busy due to work, often working late into the night. When I returned home, I was exhausted and had no time to pay attention to Amy's feelings. Amy's life seemed to have changed as well. She began to frequently visit the dessert shop on the corner. At first, I didn't care, thinking she simply liked desserts. But gradually, I noticed that she was going to the dessert shop more and more often, and every time she came back, she seemed extraordinarily happy, and she had less and less to share with me. I tried to salvage our relationship by spending time with her, taking her to the movies and out to dinner, but she always seemed distracted. I thought it was because I was so busy at work that I neglected her, so I tried even harder to make it up to her. Little did I know that her heart had long since stopped beating for me. It wasn't until I saw the flirtatious text messages on her phone that I woke up from my dream, realizing that the problems between us had already become so serious. Now, whenever I close my eyes, those sweet memories keep flashing through my mind. I remember the nights we spent watching the stars by the sea, her leaning on my shoulder as she whispered that she would love me forever. I remember the first Valentine's Day we spent together, the bouquet of roses I gave her and the bright smile on her face. I remember the times we took care of each other when we were sick. But now, these beautiful memories are like sharp knives, stabbing my heart. I looked at the photos we had taken together, and we were smiling so brightly and so happily. But now everything has changed. Amy's infidelity made me unable to believe that the good times were gone. I couldn't understand why our relationship had come to this. Had I really neglected her too much? Or had she already changed her heart? Were all those vows just a flash in the pan? I was struggling painfully in my memories, and the sweetness of the past was in stark contrast to the pain of the present, making it even more difficult for me to accept this cruel reality. I know that I can't keep dwelling on the past. I have to face reality and find a solution. But whenever I think of Amy with that pastry chef, it's like a million ants are eating away at my heart. The pain is unbearable. I started to reflect on myself, and I did a lot of things wrong in this marriage. I ignored Amy's feelings and didn't give her enough care and companionship. But I also can't accept her betrayal. I love her so much. How could she do this to me? In the whirlpool of memories, I was sometimes angry, sometimes sad, and sometimes self-blaming. I didn't know which way to go in the future, and I didn't know if our marriage could still be saved. But I knew that I couldn't give up easily, because I still loved Amy deeply, and I didn't want to lose her or lose everything we once had. I decided that I had to try for our marriage one more time. Even if the final result wasn't as I wished, I didn't want to leave myself with regrets. So I dried my tears, stood up, and looked out the window at the night sky. The stars were shining, as if they were telling me there was hope. I told myself that no matter how difficult the road ahead, I would bravely continue on to find our happiness. Maybe this is just a test in our marriage. As long as we can face it together, we will be able to overcome the difficulties and regain the sweetness of the past. Ever since I discovered Amy cheating on me with the pastry chef, my heart has been filled with anger and pain. That uncontrollable emotion is like a volcano about to erupt, ready to explode at any moment. After countless sleepless nights, I finally decided to confront the man who destroyed my family. I was going to the pastry shop to see for myself what kind of faces they really had. That day, the sun was a little blinding, and I walked with heavy steps towards the dessert shop on the corner. The sign in front of the shop swayed gently in the breeze. Once I thought it was a symbol of warmth, but now it seemed like a kind of mockery. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The shop was filled with a strong, sweet aroma, but the aroma made me feel sick. I saw the pastry chef at once. He was standing behind the counter, his tall figure standing out against the lighting. He had a head of fluffy brown hair that was casually cocked to one side, as if to show off his nonchalance. His features were sharply defined, and there was a hint of cynicism in his eyes. When he saw me walk in, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly, and his smile was defiant, as if to proclaim his victory to me. Amy was also in the store. She was sitting by the window, holding a piece of cake in her hand, but she had no desire to eat it. When she saw me, her eyes momentarily became panicked, and the blood in her face suddenly faded. Her originally fair skin became a little pale. Her hands unconsciously clenched the fork in her hand, and her body trembled slightly. I suppressed my anger and walked towards them step by step. With each step, my heartbeat quickened, and my anger surged like a tidal wave. When I reached them, I glared at the pastry chef and said, "You're the one who destroyed someone's family?" The pastry chef met my gaze without fear. He put down his tools, folded his arms across his chest, and still wore that mocking smile on the corner of his mouth. He said, "What? You've finally come. I thought you were going to keep pretending you didn't know." His words were like a sharp blade, piercing my heart and igniting my anger. I clenched my fists and leaned forward slightly, eager to swing at his damnable face. But just then, Amy suddenly stood up and stood in front of the pastry chef. Her eyes were full of determination and a hint of guilt, as she said, "Jack, don't. It's over between us. I don't love you anymore." Hearing Amy's words, my heart felt as if it had been hit hard, and the world collapsed in an instant. I couldn't believe these words had come from her mouth. The once gentle wife who loved me was now standing by someone else's side, telling me in person that she didn't love me anymore. I looked at Amy, my eyes full of pain and confusion, and asked, "Amy, we were so in love. How could you do this to me? Have you forgotten our feelings, our memories?" Amy's eyes flickered a little, and she bit her lip as she said, "That's all in the past. I love him now." Her voice was firm, but I could hear a hint of trembling. The pastry chef stood behind Amy, looking at me with a smug expression, as if mocking my impotence. He gave Amy's shoulder a little pat and said, "Baby, don't waste any more time on him. He's history." I watched their intimate behavior, and the pain in my heart reached its peak. I knew that no matter what I said at this moment, Amy would not listen. But I couldn't just give up. I couldn't let this man take my wife so easily. I took a deep breath, tried to calm myself down, and said, "Amy, I will not give up on you, and our marriage will not end like this." After saying that, I turned around and left the pastry shop. As I walked out the door, the sunlight was still blinding, but I couldn't feel a trace of warmth. I walked aimlessly down the street, Amy's words echoing in my head. I couldn't understand why our relationship had come to this. The once solemn vows seemed so feeble and powerless in the moment. When I got home, I sat on the sofa, looking at the ceiling, my heart full of unwillingness. I decided that I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I had to fight back. I began to think about how to win Amy back and make the pastry chef pay for what he had done. In the following days, I secretly observed Amy and the pastry chef's every move. I discovered that they often dated at the pastry shop and sometimes went shopping together. Seeing them so intimate made my heart ache like a knife. But I told myself to hold back and find the right moment to deal them a fatal blow. At the same time, I also began to reflect on my own problems in this marriage. I know that I once neglected Amy because of work, but that is no reason for her to cheat on me. I decided to change myself, to become better and to attract Amy's attention again. I started to pay attention to my appearance, wearing decent clothes every day and maintaining a good mental state. I also started to learn some new skills to improve my inner qualities. I hope that when I appear in front of Amy again, she will see a brand new me. Every minute and every second seemed incredibly long while I waited for the day of my counterattack. But I knew I couldn't rush things. I had to wait for the perfect moment to teach that pastry chef and Amy a lesson they'd never forget, and show them that my marriage wasn't something to be broken so easily, and I wasn't going to give up on my beloved wife. I was convinced that if I just kept at it, I could save our marriage and get our lives back on track. Amidst Amy's vehement denials and accusations against me, I walked out of the dessert shop in a daze. Although the flame in my heart that wanted to save our marriage was doused by her words, it did not go out, but instead aroused in me an even stronger desire to uncover the truth. I told myself that I could not just give up so easily, and that I must show Amy the true face of that dessert chef. So, I began to secretly investigate the pastry chef. During the day, I would loiter near the pastry shop, observing his every move. At night, I would use various channels to collect information about him. I was like a persistent detective, not missing a single detail. After several days of stalking and investigation, I finally made an unexpected discovery. It turned out that the pastry chef had a secret girlfriend. It was one afternoon when I saw him leave the pastry shop in a hurry, with a hint of excitement and anticipation on his face. I immediately followed him, tailing him all the way through several streets to a quiet neighborhood. He went into an apartment building, and I waited downstairs for a while, filled with nervousness and anticipation. Soon after, he came out with a girl. The girl had short, neat hair, was tall, had fair skin, and delicate features. Although she was not exactly stunning, she had a unique charm. They were holding hands and beaming with happiness, looking very close. Seeing this scene, I felt a surge of joy in my heart, thinking that this was a good opportunity to wake Amy up. I quickly took a picture of them with my phone and couldn't wait to go find Amy. When I put the photo in front of Amy, I thought she would be shocked, angry, and immediately wake up. But unexpectedly, Amy just glanced at the photo and said disdainfully, "Do you think I would believe this? You must have hired someone to put on a show to get me back." I was stunned by her words. I never thought she would be so stubborn and trust the pastry chef so much. I eagerly explained, "Amy, this is what I saw with my own eyes. He has been cheating on you. You can't be fooled by him anymore." Amy impatiently interrupted me, saying, "Enough, Jack. I don't want to hear any more of your boring lies. I love him, and I believe that his feelings for me are real." With that, she turned around and left, leaving me standing there, filled with helplessness and frustration. I couldn't understand why Amy just wouldn't believe the truth. Was she really bewitched by that pastry chef? I was unwilling to give up and decided to continue looking for more evidence to show her the true face of that man. In the following days, I investigated even harder. I started to investigate the pâtissier's past and discovered that he had been very unfaithful in his relationships, having had many relationships, and each one ending badly. I also found some of his former girlfriends, and from them I learned about some of his bad behavior. Just when I thought I was getting closer to the truth, I discovered another secret of Amy's, and this secret made me even more confused. One day, while sorting through Amy's things, I accidentally found a diary. I know it's wrong to read someone else's diary, but I really wanted to understand Amy's inner thoughts, so I couldn't help but open it. The content of the diary surprised me. It turned out that before Amy cheated, she was already very disappointed in our marriage. She felt that I was becoming more and more indifferent, paying less and less attention to her, and she couldn't feel the love and warmth in this marriage. Moreover, she mentioned things that I had no idea about, such as the fact that she had tried to communicate with me, but I had always used my busy work schedule as an excuse to avoid her. Reading this, I felt full of guilt. I realized that I had indeed neglected Amy too much in our marriage. But that's no excuse for her infidelity, and the actions of that pastry chef are unforgivable. I began to reflect on my own faults in this marriage, and at the same time I was more determined to win Amy back. I knew that the situation was complicated, and that I had to not only let Amy see the pastry chef for what he really was, but also repair the rift in our relationship. I decided to find an opportunity to have a good talk with Amy, to tell her what was on my mind and to hear what was on hers. Perhaps only through honest communication could we find a solution to the problem and regain our former happiness. While waiting for the day I could talk to Amy, I went through a very difficult time every day. I didn't know if she would be willing to sit down and talk with me, or if our conversation would be effective. But I told myself that no matter the outcome, I had to try, because I didn't want to lose Amy, and I didn't want to lose everything we had. I look forward to that conversation with Amy, hoping that it will be a turning point in our marriage and that we can get out of the predicament and embrace happiness again. But I also know that the road ahead is full of unknowns and challenges, and it is still uncertain whether we can successfully overcome this difficult period. But I am willing to work hard for our marriage and fight for it, even if there is only a glimmer of hope. After discovering Amy's misunderstanding of me and the conspiracy behind the pastry chef, I decided to speed up the pace of my investigation and make sure that all the truth came to light. In those days, I was like possessed, leaving no detail unchecked, gathering evidence everywhere just to show Amy the truth. After countless days and nights of hard work, I finally had enough evidence. It was a weekend afternoon. The sun shone through the windows and cast dappled shadows on the living room floor. I took a deep breath, dialed Amy's phone number, and asked her to come over, saying that there was something important I needed to tell her. When Amy arrived, she wore a look of impatience on her face, and her eyes still held a sense of distance from me. She walked into the living room, sat down on the sofa casually, and asked coldly, "Jack, what do you really want? I'm busy. I don't have time to play these silly games with you." I was not affected by her attitude, but quietly walked up to her and placed a thick stack of documents on the coffee table. I looked her in the eye and said seriously, "Amy, these are the results of my investigation over this period of time. Please take a look and make a decision after reading them." Amy frowned and reluctantly picked up the documents. At first, she just casually flipped through them, but gradually her expression became grave, and her eyes were full of shock and disbelief. As she leafed through the pages, her hands began to tremble slightly, and her breathing became rapid. When she finished reading the last page, her hands hung down weakly, and the documents scattered on the sofa. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with tears, and her voice trembled as she said, Is this all true?" I nodded and said, "Yes, Amy. These are all the results of my personal investigation, and they are absolutely true. The pastry chef approached you not because of love at all. He just wanted to use you to take revenge on me. And the reason you cheated on me was because you misunderstood that I was having an affair, but it was all just a misunderstanding. Amy's tears welled up in her eyes, and she covered her face with her hands, crying hysterically. Her cries were full of remorse and pain, as if she wanted to release all the grievances and self-blame in her heart. As I watched her in such pain, my heart was full of pain, but at the same time there was a trace of helplessness. After a long time, Amy's crying gradually subsided. She lowered her hands, looked at me, her eyes full of guilt, and said, "Jack, I was wrong. I really was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you, and I shouldn't have cheated on you so impulsively. I thought you didn't love me anymore. I thought our marriage was over." I sat down next to her, gently took her hand and said, "Amy, I know that our marriage has problems, and I am also largely responsible. I ignored you because of work and you didn't feel loved and cared for. That was my fault. But our relationship shouldn't be destroyed by these misunderstandings and conspiracies." Amy nodded and said, "I now understand that I have always loved you deeply, but I was blinded by anger and disappointment. That pastry chef, he deceived me and took advantage of my feelings. I was really stupid." Watching Amy blame herself like this, the resentment in my heart gradually dissipated. I knew that she was also a victim of this conspiracy, and she had also paid the price for her mistakes. But I was still a little conflicted, not sure whether I should forgive her. After all, her infidelity had caused me a lot of harm, and those painful memories were still vivid. We sat quietly on the sofa, neither of us saying a word. A heavy atmosphere filled the air. After a while, Amy looked up at me, her eyes full of expectation, and said, "Jack, can you forgive me? Can we go back to the way things were?" I looked at her, my heart filled with mixed emotions. We used to love each other so much, but now we have become so estranged because of these things. I wanted to forgive her, but I was afraid that our marriage could never go back to the way it was before, and that the rift would remain forever. Just as I was hesitating, Amy suddenly stood up and walked over to the window. She looked out at the view and said, "Jack, I know I've hurt you, and I know it's hard for you to forgive me, but I really don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our home. I'm willing to make changes for our marriage, and I will prove my determination with my actions." I looked at her back, and the defense in my heart gradually collapsed. I remembered the bits and pieces of our past, and those beautiful memories flooded my mind like a tide. I knew that I still deeply loved her, and I didn't want to lose her. I walked up to her, gently embraced her and said, "Amy, I'm willing to give our marriage a chance, but we have to work hard together to repair our relationship." Amy turned around, her eyes full of surprise and emotion. She hugged me tightly and said, "Thank you, Jack. I will cherish this opportunity. I will not let you down again. Although the truth has been revealed, our marriage is still full of challenges. Whether we can really reconcile and regain our former happiness is still unknown. But at least, we are both willing to work hard and try for each other and for our marriage. In the days to come, we will face the unknown difficulties together and move towards a new life together." After the truth came out, things did not return to normal as quickly as I had hoped. I was caught in an unspeakable dilemma, as if I were in a dark abyss, surrounded by endless confusion and conflict. Amy looked haggard, her once radiant smile long gone, replaced by a face full of exhaustion and self-blame. Her eyes were full of guilt towards me, and whenever she looked at me, she would quickly avert her gaze, as if she was afraid to face the complex emotions in my eyes. I looked at her and a feeling of indescribable pain welled up in my heart. Once upon a time, she was so beautiful and full of vitality, but now she has been tortured by the twists and turns of this relationship and has become like this. The love we once shared was like the warm sunshine that always shone in our lives. Those sweet memories are like precious scroll paintings that keep emerging in my mind. The beautiful times we spent together, strolling on the beach at dusk, running under the umbrella in the rain, and working hard for our little family. These images replay in my mind like a movie. I know that my love for her has never faded. It is deeply rooted in my heart and hard to let go. However, her betrayal was like a sharp knife, stabbing me in the heart and leaving an unhealable wound. Every time I think of her and the pastry chef, my heart is filled with pain and anger. I keep asking myself, can I really let go of all this and take her back? Can I really forget her betrayal and just carry on as if nothing had happened? Everyone around me advises me to let go. They say that betrayal is an unforgivable mistake, and even if you force yourself to stay together, the rift in your heart can never be healed. My friends tell me not to torture myself over a broken relationship, but to look ahead bravely and find my own happiness. My family is also worried that I will be hurt again, and they hope that I can make a rational choice and not let myself fall into even deeper pain. But how could they understand my feelings for Amy? We had been through so much together, experiencing so many joys and sorrows together, and this relationship had long since become a part of my life. I couldn't let go of this relationship, of her who had been by my side. Even though she had made mistakes, I still couldn't bring myself to leave her. During those long days and nights, I sat alone in front of the window, looking at the starry sky outside, as I weighed up my options over and over again. Sometimes I told myself that I should give her a chance. After all, we both loved each other deeply, and if we could be honest with each other and work together, maybe our marriage could get back on track. But sometimes, I would be overcome by the pain and anger in my heart, and feel that her betrayal was unforgivable, that I could no longer trust her. Just as I was at a loss for what to do, Amy made a decision that gave me hope for the future. One evening, Amy gently entered my room, her eyes full of nervousness and determination. She sat down next to me, took a deep breath and said, "Jack, I know I have made an unforgivable mistake. I have caused you so much pain, and I really regret it. During this time, I have been reflecting on my actions, and I know I can't go on like this." I looked at her quietly without saying anything, waiting for her to continue. Amy continued, "I have decided to leave the city and go to a strange place to start my life over. I want to use this time away to calm myself down and also to allow you to think about our relationship. I don't want to cause you any more trouble, and I hope you can be happy." Hearing her words, I felt a mixture of emotions. On the one hand, I felt a little reluctant to let her go. After all, we had been so in love, and I didn't want to lose her. On the other hand, I felt that her decision might be a good choice. We both needed time and space to think things through calmly. I looked at her and said slowly, "Amy, I know you're doing this for the best. I also need time to sort out my thoughts. But I want you to know that no matter where you go, my heart will always be with you. I will wait for you, and when you've thought things through, we can face our relationship again." Amy's eyes were filled with tears, and she nodded and said, "Thank you, Jack. I will reflect on myself. I hope we still have a chance to start again." The next day, Amy packed her bags and left the city. Watching her leave, I felt a mix of emotions. I didn't know what the future held for us, or if we would be able to get back together. But I knew that I was willing to wait and work hard for our relationship. During Amy's absence, I began to re-examine our marriage and reflect on my own shortcomings in the relationship. I also hope that through this period of growth, our relationship will become even stronger in the future. Amy's decision also gave me a glimmer of hope for our future. I look forward to the day she returns and we can rediscover the happiness we once had.